Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's panel on asexual representation in young adult science fiction and fantasy. I'm Rosie Thor. I'm going to be the moderator today, but I'm also the author of Tarnished Are the Stars and Fire Becomes Her. Today we have Tara Sim, Emily Victoria, Alicia Dow, Lindsay Miller, and Margaret Owen with us. And if everyone could just go ahead and introduce themselves, I'll go ahead and just kind of call on you so that it's easier. We don't have to talk over each other. Tara, do you want to start?
Sure. As Rosie says, I am Tara Sim, the author of the Timekeeper trilogy, Scavenge the Stars duology, and the Dark Gods trilogy, which is currently ongoing. That's me.
Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm the author of This Golden Flame and also Silver in the Mist, which is coming out next week.
Yay! Congrats. All right, Alicia.
Hi, I am Alicia Dow, and I'm the author of, and these two things. This one is Star and the Kindred, and also a short story in Out There, and other stuff. but, like in a while. Like we got a few months at least.
Great. Well, I can't wait to hear about everybody's next projects later on. Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Miller. I am the author of the Mask of Shadows duology, Bell Revolt, the game, What We Devour, which is here, Prince of Song and Sea, and then the upcoming Sleeping Beauty retelling. And then I will be in an anthology about being ace. That's the other thing.
Right, Margaret.
Hello, I'm Margaret Owen. I am the author of the Merciful Crow duology and Little Thieves, which will be a trilogy. I am one of the editors on the Grimoire of Grave Fates anthology that will be out in June. And all three of my books that are out right now are currently propping up my laptop to help me mitigate the double chin thing from looking down at a screen. So just pretend that you can visualize it. Pretend that you can see them. Use your mind.
Okay, wait. I have something for this.
I think I have one back there on my shelf.
Oh my God, is teamwork making the dream work?
Heck yes, teamwork. I totally have the same thing where I have like a stack of all of my picture books. So I have like 20 of them just sitting here. On top of a stool, on top of a box. It's chaos. So totally feel you on that.
Right.
So you're all authors of wonderful books starring ace spectrum characters in science fiction and fantasy. And I'm curious to know what brought you to writing about this? What was your journey to start writing about ace characters? And what was that like for you? Let's go in the opposite order. And we'll start with Margaret.
Oh no. I kind of fell into it in that there was a scene in Little Thieves that I was writing, and I wanted the character to just sort of briefly be like, this is what I'm into. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm writing a book that is specifically about things that I like and I enjoy and that appeal to me. I'm just cutting myself a big old slice of cheesecake for this one. And I basically put that on the page, and at that point, I knew I identified as Demi, and it made me sort of pause and say, okay, so there's some beats in this story that if I'm going to commit to this, I need to revisit and think about. And then I was like, oh no, if the main character's Demi, that makes some of those even better in the even worse way. And I was like, I'm doing this forever. That's just, that is it was exciting and refreshing to stop trying to sort of make romance narratives work in a way that I didn't really empathize with. And that was, or I wouldn't say it like that didn't sort of gel with my experiences. And so once I was like, no, we're going to do this. Vanya's going to be Demi, and I'm going to touch on it in a couple places. I just didn't look back.
That vibe's very hard. I love that on ACE panels, I always feel like we're a bunch of bobbleheads because someone's talking and we're all just like, yes, yep. That is exactly my experience. Thank you. Lindsay, what about you?
Margaret's answered all of it somehow for all of my books as well. I don't know. I was writing Belle and I just sort of got into the same headspace of I would like to do something for me. and enjoy it. And then I think it really came all together in What We Devour when I was just like, I would like to write a very deeply intimate character who is also extremely ace. How do I put this onto the page in a way that just feels completely whole and real and also satisfying? And then it just sort of all came together. I don't know. I thought it was just something I really enjoyed doing, and so I wanted to write it so that other people could read it.
Yeah. Alicia?
So I kind of just do whatever I want whenever I want, and I just wait until somebody says no. And I'm kind of like, I don't like when I get told no, but I just do whatever I want, and I wanted to write how I wanted to write, and Ellie was that from the beginning. And I was afraid actually of putting that on the page, of giving her the label on the page, because I had worried that I was going to get a lot of pushback from other, ace folks reading. And then they would be like, this isn't enough, this is this, and I don't identify with that, and I don't feel like it, encompasses my experience of it. So I was actually a little afraid of doing that. But I share the same identity, so I was like, I don't know, I kind of just want to do what I want. So then I just went ahead and I did it. And, of course, I ended up still getting pushback anyway, because, not everybody is, a monolith, and the experience is different from everyone. But I just feel like that's the natural way to tell a story. And the story is not about her identity and how she falls in love, or if she falls in love. The story is like an alien invasion. So I feel like I can do anything I want on the side and just go really as fun as possible. And that's basically what I've done with every book so far. And every book has had an ace character in it, and maybe various degrees of it. But I think I'm getting more into who I am as well on the page. Because, when I started writing, I didn't know what that word was. I didn't really have words for what I was. So I just wrote characters who were like me. And I thought, I don't need to tell them why they are. They just are. And now we can use those words. So it's great.
Yeah, I think that's great. Just do what you want. I want to say, that feeling of the pushback. I think we've all experienced that in some capacity. And something that I love so much about the breadth of the ace spectrum and a spectrum that's represented in books right now is how much diversity there is within one label. We can all experience it differently, and those are all valid. That's been such a huge learning experience for me as both an ace person and an ace writer, is recognizing that my experience is not everyone's experience, and it's okay and actually better for us all to have a voice and get to share what our experience is, even if we're all using the same word. And that's such a cool thing. Anyway, Emily, do you want to go ahead and share a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, so I started writing romance, like young adult romance, just because when I was growing up, that was kind of the books I had read, and I kind of assumed you had to have romance in young adult, and it didn't fit me at all, and I didn't enjoy doing it. And so then eventually I just decided to write a story that was true to me and that more explored those family relationships and those friendship relationships. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I fell into it, just wanting to write something that fit me.
Awesome. Yeah. Tara.
Yeah, basically what everyone just said. I think I really started to kind of dig into that mindset, like concurrent with my own journey. So by the time that I was, brainstorming Scavenge the Stars, I was like, well, why not have a main character who is Demi, who is kind of like, she like knows it kind of like from the outset, but her relationship kind of like evolves in like a very like slow kind of way. So I wanted to like experience like that dynamic through that. And then like, her best friend is like Arrow Ace. And I was like, let's just continue with this tradition. So kind of like, not exactly figuring out my own stuff through my characters, but kind of like projecting things that I've always felt onto these characters and like exploring more of them and how they kind of like fit into that role. So it's kind of like a give and take sort of situation.
I love that. Thanks. So fun. You mentioned that you have both a demisexual and an ace character in your book, and several of you I know have multiple different ace spectrum identities represented in your books. Even just on this panel, we have a bunch of different labels that have already been talked about, and I'm curious to hear more about how you explored those different facets of asexuality, the different labels that you're working with, and what you gravitated toward, how you define those specific identities, things like that within the science fiction and fantasy that you're writing. Let's start with Emily.
So yeah, I'm only on book 2 so far, and so I've mostly stuck to my own identity, which is Arrow Ace. So I've kind of just looked at different aspects, I guess, of my identity, being a teen and being an adult. So far, I've really stuck in my own kind of corner of my own identity. But in the future, I do hope to kind of expand and explore other facets as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's go to Margaret.
I found, so in Little Thieves, I think that's the biggest one where it's like, no, this, we're going to put this right on the page. I've had a couple characters where I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, no, they're Arrow Ace. I know that. I'm just not going to, like, the plot hasn't called for that to be directly tackled, which is one of the challenges too. But in Little Thieves, I was like, I'm going to have both the main character and the love interest be demi, because it feels like such a weird space to be in, where you're like, I'm like ace 99% of the time, and then there's like one jerk who's gonna get to you, and he's just gonna make you basically fall over and act like a fool, and it's, you're just gonna get utterly clotheslined by one person. And I really had fun sort of in exploring how that functions for two different characters, where how one character might step on a rake and the other one might walk into a sliding glass door, as it were, but also have this very vulnerable moment where they're both sort of talking about what that means and how that functions for them, and basically being like, I know this isn't the usual, but it's also not about you, it's about how I operate. Also, my cats definitely took the opportunity to just cyclone through here, so I apologize for any background noise. That sounded like a bar fight in the background.
I love how you just described like all of that, just like surprise attraction, as just 100% slapstick comedy vibes. Like,
yeah, that's kind of how,
yeah,
right. And like, it was important to me to have not just like the sort of vulnerable, slightly, you don't want to have the PSA moments. Oh no, we lost Tara. You don't want to have the PSA moments, but you do, or you want to have sort of like the fun moment of like, there's comedy and some drama in there of being ace, and I don't think that gets, or a lot of people want the sort of PSA version, when it's like, no, we're gonna talk about, like, the one time you actually do get a crush on someone, and then it feels like you're just stepping into a sea of rakes, or the part where I think Lindsay does exceptionally well in What We Devour, where it's like, well, yes, I am the seductive villain, and I'm going to, and try to charm you into doing, furthering my own agenda. And the ace main character is like, cool, never mind, like, go have a ball, have fun, Godspeed and good luck. And I think that fleshing that out is, always, or is really rounding out the ace experience too.
I so agree that Lindsay did a great job on that. So let's make Lindsay talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh no, I love you both. Yeah, I think Sea of Rakes, for experiencing how other people think about and perceive attraction, is a good metaphor.
Sea of Rakes would also make a great title for a historical romance set at sea with like everyone on the boat is just a rake.
Okay, I have an idea for an anthology once we're done with this panel. That's that title. Then
what if the boat is carrying gardening tools?
It's a
Even
gardening
better. No, I like
like
it
club
more.
cruise.
Landscaping.
Except they've all infiltrated this gardening club specifically to get married, but unbeknownst to all of them, they're all ace and it's all going terribly.
I would read that.
Listen, it turns into a polycule at the end. That's just how it resolves.
Yeah. They all love each other. Now they live on a boat forever.
Is that not Our Flag Means Death?
I was about to say, I have a show recommendation.
Can't get Rosie started about Our Flag Means Death.
I'll mute myself now. Lindsay, please continue.
Yeah, thank you. I just love metaphor for identity, because I feel like that's one of the things where 3 years ago, or however long I was writing Bell Revolt, I was like, yeah, this is how I feel. And then I started writing What We Devour, and I was like, no, actually, this one is how I feel now. Because I feel like that's a very fluid way to describe how you feel in the moment. And I feel like as you grow and change and meet more people and know yourself more around those people, how you view yourself and how attraction functions for you may or may not change. So I really like using different metaphors to describe different kinds of aceness in my fantasy. And I really love exploring the less comedy, but sort of, I have been dropped into this extremely tropey moment for young adult fantasy, except I'm Ace and this isn't going to work in the same manner. So what do we do now? Whoops. I think especially I liked doing that in What We Devour because Bell Revolt was sort of my mini PSA Ace book, where I was like, I want to write an Ace character who has the tragic feelings of, oh, I might not be able to have a relationship because I might not meet someone who understands these words I am saying to explain myself. And I wanted to have them have that feeling, and then their partner just be like, I mean, that's a valid feeling, but also I love you. And just sort of do the happily ever after understanding. I want you, because I feel like sometimes we feel the drama in ourselves happening and we project that onto other people without even trying to experience something sometimes. So I wanted to have that moment in a book of, here's the drama. It actually doesn't really matter. It doesn't need to be this dramatic. Everything's going to be okay.
All right, Alicia.
Okay. So I feel like Emily, who is back, yay. I kind of stuck in my own little corner. Let's see, with The Sound of Stars, Ellie was right off the bat. Like, I knew that she was demi-ace. And with The Kindred, I knew that I already built that bond in really well. So I thought I can just do whatever I want now, and I don't have to answer any questions, and I don't have to make this about that. And the reason why I don't do that is because I feel like it's really hard to do in sci-fi. I feel like if you really want to go straight into character work and be like, I'm doing all of this, people get mad at you because you're not building enough in other areas. And I think one of the biggest critique I got of The Kindred specifically was that it was too character focused at the same time as not building out into more worlds. And I was like, no, but that's what I like to do. That's my jam. But there is a level I have to get to, and then I have to be like, okay, I have to rein this in. So I have stuck within that identity on the A spectrum. But then I always, I play with, pansexuality. I play with bisexuality. These are things that I understand and I identify with. And then I have, like, in A Song of Salvation, which is coming out next year, I was just like, let's go full Alicia on this one. And I got to rein in the romance, and I got to just have super, space hijinks, which was really, really fun for me. And it's like, there's a little bit of romance in it, but it's not the main thing as with the other two. And I think there's a lot of joy with that. But then at the same time, I have so many identities I have to squash in to a book. I mean, I always write fat, black, queer, ace, all of these different things. And it can be a lot. And I get told often that it's a lot. And, that's also my personality is, wow, she is a lot. And all my books are that way too. So I don't know. I'm just going to keep doing it until somebody says no. I'm just gonna
Please keep
Correct.
being what I love about your books.
I vote that you keep doing it even after they say no.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Especially if it makes them mad. Do it more.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. All right, Tara.
I've kind of forgotten what the question is, but
It's totally fine. That checks out. We're just talking about the different sublabels within the ACE identity and how you
right.
with those.
Yeah. I think kind of like what Lindsay was saying about metaphor. I think it took me like a few years to realize why I love ghost romance so much. And then I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. So you can kind of see like the inklings of it in Timekeeper, right? And then when you get to Scavenge the Stars, it's more of like it was a very like intentional decision of me being like, so I know that there is going to be like this kind of forbidden, not really forbidden, but like this kind of like clandestine romance happening, but I want it to be something slow, something where like, you know, one of them is demi, one of them is bi, and so one of them is like very sure of like what he likes and the other one not so much. And so I kind of wanted to explore those dynamics. And then in the City of Dusk, I didn't really have the intention of making Risha ace. It kind of like came to me after the fact, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense." And again, ghost romance. it's always going to be a metaphor for me. And so I think like exploring those characters in that setting is in like that fantasy setting where you can kind of like have all these different iterations and metaphors is like really fun, and it prevents me from being like, let me explain what this means, because like I never want to do that. I never want to be like in my YA I kind of do, because like I want readers to kind of like feel in touch like with the characters and stuff like that. But like in adult it's more of like it's up to you. You figure it out. I know what they are, but if you want to like project something onto them that is more meaningful to you, then, you know, please by all means do so. So kind of exploring it through that genre lens has been, I think, really fun and also helpful.
That's great, because that leads directly into our next question. But I just want to make sure, did I get everyone? You all moved around on the screen quite a bit during that question.
Did we get Emily?
Yes. Okay. Great. Perfect. I was just like, uh-oh, I feel like I missed somebody.
Listen, I've been rising through the ranks.
Yeah. I do want to talk a little bit about genre and how that impacts how you write these identities, because we're all dealing with fantastical worlds or, you know, space, and that can really change how you're going to approach talking about identity. And Tara, you just talked a little bit about that. Do you want to expand on that at all? I'll go ahead and let you start things off.
Yeah. So one of the, you know, great things about genre, and for me, you know, fantasy, high fantasy, that kind of stuff, is that I just get to make stuff up. And so for a lot of times, you know, if I'm working with a secondary world, which I most often do, I just make a world that is accepting. Because that's what I want. Like, I think it's really important to explore those topics in like certain settings, or like if you are building like a fantasy world with like a certain type of like power structure and stuff like that. I think those stories are definitely important, but those aren't the stories that I want to write or want to give to my readers. So instead, I'm like, here's a world where you're accepted. Have fun. There's still bad things happening and you might die, but that will not be one of those things that you have to worry about. So like with the Scavenge world, you know, everything is very like accepted. You know, there's this one part where I think Amaya is talking to a non-binary character, and they are able to like wear something that tells people automatically, oh, my pronouns are they, them, and stuff. And it's just everything is very accepted. So I try not to have worlds where people are like, oh, you're ace? What does that mean? It's so weird. It's unconventional. Like, that doesn't fit in with our society. Like, I just don't want to deal with that. And so I think also with what I said before about trying to explain things, like I don't really delve into it too much. Like in my YA, I try to do it a little bit more so that, you know, readers can kind of see themselves a bit on the page more. But in the instance of like the City of Dusk, like I know that Risha is ace, and it is kind of like threaded in there. She's like, I don't want to marry. I don't really care that I have a fiance. I don't want to do all this stuff. I just want to like do my goal. I just want to work. So just leave me alone. And so it's in there, but it's also like left just to be kind of like its own thing. It doesn't like really have any effect on the plot necessarily. So I feel like freer to just be like, here's my explanation for this, and then you can just kind of like take it however you want to. The reader knows that this world is very accepting. There's no homophobia in it. So it's easier to just kind of be like, here's a thing, and I don't have to like say the exact word, asexual, demisexual, bisexual, it's just explained enough for the reader to just, kind of understand like, that character's ace. I get it.
Yeah. All right, Emily, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm kind of the same. I really like that when you're starting building your world, you can basically kind of change all the assumptions and prejudices of our world and just say, yeah, this is a queer normative world where everyone's accepted, where everything is just kind of normalized in that sense. And I think that's a big reason why I do write fantasy and science fiction, because you can't really do that as easily in the contemporary sphere. And I just like, again, having the tension of the story coming from things like, the big bad guy or dragons or pirates rather than, am I going to be accepted?
Great. Margaret.
Yeah, I sort of default to the the world is not heteronormative, let's put it that way. But I also I definitely struggle with whether or not to use labels on the page since I write fantasy, partially because it's also like you don't see a lot of, or you wouldn't expect someone to be like, well, I'm a woman and I'm straight, so I'm courting this man, and like that sort of onus is not on someone to be like, oh no, I'm sorry, sir, I am a man and I can't kiss you because I'm straight, like that kind of thing is like just not an expected thing. So to further be like, or to further inject labels into a world where that is heteronormative, or not heteronormative, that is just sort of queer friendly, and like that is the queer normative, that's the word I'm looking for. To inject labels is almost like it's the balance between normalizing and identifying. Those are two very difficult things. Like if it's a normal experience, do you need to label it? Because that can be important and empowering for some people. And so for me, I try to take the tactic of, I'm going to be very clear about what this person's experience is, what they feel, how they experience that, and identify that on the page. And folks who know the label will be like, oh yes, that is that experience. And people who don't but do share that experience still feel validated. And I think with writing primarily in genre, or in fantasy, you have so much flexibility with what your world looks like and what feels normal. And sometimes that it doesn't necessarily have to be, say, a queer normative world to have queerness in it and have that explored and tackled and picked at too. Because I think we've also been finding throughout history that there sure are a lot of gal pals out there. There sure are a lot of fellas amongst the Spartans who have complicated relationships with one another. And I think, while we wouldn't necessarily look back at historical times or fantasy set in historical eras, and say, yeah, that world is queer normative, you can still have queer people in a non-queer normative world that that exists, and acknowledging that their experience isn't just being driven from the village or burned as a witch, and like they still existed and lived full and beautiful lives. And I also, get on a little bit of a soapbox here of, the fantasy where, especially where it's like second world fantasy, where it's like, oh, we're going to have dragons, and we're going to have, we're going to have dragons, we're going to have fairies, we're going to have interdimensional warping, but also it's going to be populated like solely by able-bodied white straight men who also have varying degrees of sexual violence against women-coded people. Like that is challenging to me in a lot of ways. And I feel like fantasy of all genres should be able to venture beyond that kind of framework for sure.
Yeah, the I'll allow dragons, but queer people is a stone too far is just rampant.
It's not historically accurate, and you're like, I'm sorry, which of these were present in the in his antiquity, dragons or queer people? Because
Yeah.
we've got evidence of one, bud. We got evidence of one.
Exactly. All right, Lindsay.
Yeah, to build off of that, though I might talk about it too long, so tell me to be quiet if I do. Like, man, the amount of times I've read a book that was absolutely lovely and then saw someone say something about it where they're like, just didn't feel very historically accurate to have queer people in it. And I was like, that's a fantasy novel, ma'am.
Right.
I know it's based off of a specific time period. However, I feel like you're missing a key point in the description of the novel. But yeah, I really love. I think this all comes back to, like, my best friend and I once had a conversation when we were, God, I think like 22. It was before I realized I wanted to write books. And I'm sure it was because of some really wonderful theoretical book they read, because they're very smart. But we were talking about queering spaces and just the process of making spaces not necessarily safer, and not necessarily queer, but just making them accessible to queer people. And for some reason that has always stuck with me in terms of books and creating fantasy worlds. And like, I think even when I was writing The Game, which is my only contemporary novel, it's probably my most fantastical, because I was just like, the only problem in this world, this one murderer. There is nothing else happening here that is bad, and everyone's going to be fine with everyone else except the murdering. The murdering's the only issue.
We draw the line at murder.
Yeah, which is not a line drawn in any of my other novels. But yeah, I love building a fantasy world, second world fantasy from the ground up, and getting to go through and say, this is my inspiration. This is what I think the magic system is, like, specifically because I really love writing about power structures and how those might shift or change with the introduction of like magic or some other aspect. I really like going into it and going like, how am I going to make this space accessible and safe and fun and still tense and dramatic for the plot, but not for the people reading it. Like, as much as I sometimes will have in my books push back on the characters for their identities, I think What We Devour and Belle both have scenes where someone's like, I mean, you'll just get used to it. And I was just like, because I feel like that is something that I have heard so often, that there is a level of realism I want, but it's not the level that is. It is the level that you get to see the character and as a reader get to say, no, actually, get out of here. I'm not going to do anything you say, you're wrong, and I'm going to go start a revolution. That's the important thing here. It's like, I like making them accessible and feel safer while also trying to touch on the things that I've felt have pushed me back in real life, and then giving a reader a chance to do the thing you don't really get to do when you're 17 and not quite sure what to say in a public setting, and just letting them experience that through the character.
Yeah, I love that the reaction to acephobia is, let's start a revolution, because mood.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like this is a symptom of a larger problem. Does anyone have a book about this? It's like, that's what dark academia is, right?
All right, Alicia.
So for me, like everybody else said, this is like they're all so many amazing answers, and they're all like basically saying, I take what I like from the world we live in, and I throw away the rest. And I go with what I want. I want my worlds to be, like Lindsay said, accessible. I want you to feel safe for who you are. It is hard because I will say, for writing a Black character, there is certain considerations I have to make, which I don't always love to do. And I had to do with The Sound of Stars. I did less so for The Kindred, and I definitely did not do it all for A Song of Salvation. And I was just like, yeah, Black people exist in space. Let's go with it. That's just going on. I do not want to go over any reason why they shouldn't, and I really don't think you should ask me about it. So that's how I'm going to play it. I really just feel like we have to write the worlds we want to see. And if there's a revolution, of course I have a revolution, all of mine too. Maybe there is something to that. But I think we give the reader something where they feel good as well. And if they are coming at that with that identity with them, and they go into this world, they're like, oh, okay, I'd be fine here. Like, I mean, would you? There's aliens. I don't know. But I hope so. It's not going to be for those reasons. So I don't want to write. I never wanted to write a coming out book. And my own reason is because, like, I just don't know how to tell that story. And I feel like there are so many amazing authors already who are doing that and who are making these, like, such beautiful tomes, and people are taking them, and they're at the library, and it's amazing. I'm not there yet. I don't even really like contemporary in general. I can do contemporary fantasy, contemporary sci-fi, but I can't do contemporary. Like, that just doesn't work for me. I did, I think, with middle grade, and I have the Cookie Crumbles coming out in like 2025, but that's murder. So that's fine, because I threw a lot of cookies in there.
It doesn't count as contemporary if there's murder, right? That's the
Yeah,
rule.
right?
Murder
I feel
is
like if it's not murder, that's okay. But yeah, I think we want to give readers the worlds we want, and that we think they would like, and that they would feel really comfortable inside of.
Well, that is, again, another perfect segue into my next question. But before I get into it, I do want to mention, for the people who are watching, if you have questions for our lovely panelists and you want to put them in the chat, go ahead and do that. I will do my best to get to them closer to the end, but definitely put them in the chat, and we're looking for them. So if you have questions, let us know. I am curious about how you approached writing an ace spectrum character for a specific audience. For some people, your book will be the first book that they pick up that has an ace character in it, whether they themselves are ace or not, or maybe they're questioning, or it might be one of many. And I'm curious how you approached writing a book where you were imagining these multiple different audiences that might pick it up. Alicia, if you want to kick us off with an expansion of your very good answer from like 20 seconds ago. Oh, you're muted.
Okay, can you just say the question one more time? Sorry.
Yes, it was very convoluted, and I'm sorry, and I was distracted by Margaret's cat. The question is, how did you approach writing your book for different audiences, either those who are coming to your book with this being their first time reading about an ace protagonist, or readers who are coming to it with it being one of many? How did you balance that? How did you approach writing for your audience?
I don't actually think about it. That's really, I know. I mean, I don't really think about the audience. I guess sometimes I think about a little kid at a library, because I used to be a librarian and I worked with a lot of kids and teens, and I think, would they like that? And then that maybe sometimes factors into what I'm doing, but often I'm not thinking about all of that, because if I start thinking about audience and what they want, I will never be able to write. I will never be able to write at all. And I have seen it right after getting reviews for The Sound of Stars, where I was like reading them and I was like, oh, okay, right. So I never want to write again. I think I've ruined everything and I'm terrible at this and I should give up. That took me like a few months to get over, and then I went right into writing The Kindred. So I guess I just kind of approach it where I think here's what you need to know, and here's how I'm going to get it in there, hopefully really well. Maybe it's going to be a little bit more so in the beginning with The Sound of Stars because I was building that entire universe, and I didn't have to do that so much with The Kindred. But yeah, I just write whatever I want. I feel like if Inkyard was watching this, they'd be like, yeah, that tracks with her.
I mean, that's totally fair. Tara.
I'm pretty similar in that I try not to think just at all, just baseline, try not to think at all. To which my editors will come back with, why did you choose this? And I'm like, I don't know. I have a pretty similar thing of like, I know what I want to do, and like everyone else can just accept it or just not read it. I don't care. But there are like certain scenes, especially when I write YA, where I try to be more mindful of that kind of stuff. There are definitely certain scenes that I am more careful with than like the book as a whole. So like there will be like a moment where I kind of dig in more to like the character's introspection of like herself and like how she's relating to other people and stuff like that. So like there will be moments throughout the book where I'm like, okay, I want to like make sure that because like what we were saying before in the early question, I try to make safe spaces for my readers in my worlds, and so I want them to continue to have this safe space while also either learning about this different type of identity through a character, or maybe perhaps learning a little bit more about their identity, or like kind of empathizing with a character based on like how I word something or how I have these particular characters interact in a very specific way. So there are moments here and there where I try to be more like intentional, but for the most part, I'm like, I'm just going to let them do what they're going to do. She's going to kill a man. Great. Awesome. That's usually where it goes for some reason.
For some reason, we may never know. Emily.
Yeah, so I'm also kind of not really at that spot where like I think about audiences yet. I just feel like there's so many different experiences out there, and you can't really be everything to everyone. And that's not just with like the ace identity or queer identity, just in like general. Your book's never going to be loved by everyone. So I just feel it's important to just like kind of write a book that's true to yourself, and then it'll find its audience rather than like starting with the audience and trying to write a book towards that.
Right. Margaret, we have a specific question for you before you give this answer, which is that can you show us your necklace?
So it's actually two. This one is just sort of weird little chain with a hand, naturally, and then this one is actually a harpy, not a cat. The cat was here earlier chewing on my necklaces. I apologize for that. He was very determined and wanted to be held like a little baby. So, yeah. As far as like the audience situation goes, I'm gonna echo what Emily said here in that you just can, or and Alicia said too, that you cannot write for an audience. Like, or I mean, like, you can and you can't. Trying to basically write from a defensive crouch of what are the worst things that people are going to say about my book and what I've written is just going to absolutely annihilate any motivation to write. It's just going to be, you're going to be Sisyphus pushing that rock up a hill, and that rock is going to be all the terrible things people are saying in your imagination. And at the same time, I think there's a difference between writing for an audience and writing with responsibility, and that's a very tough line to walk without being sort of too Puritan. In that, with Little Thieves, I was basically like, yeah, I'm going to dump a couple of ace characters in here, and they're going to exist, and they might talk about it a little bit, and that's going to be that. Well, in the sequel, sex enters the equation, and it's one of those things where I'm not just writing about, the experience of a first time that also might be the first time a reader's reading about it. We're dissecting that from a ace, just like through an ace lens, and being like, what parts of this am I comfortable or not comfortable with? You know, what parts of this experience am I, or, you know, how can I express what I'm not comfortable with? And that's where, as an author who was tackling a very specific identity, or, you know, and an identity that I share, I feel like I have a responsibility to be like, I'm going to at least walk you through some of the ways that, you know, some of the discussions that you are probably going to have, and give you some tools to work with this, but also some stuff to expect. And you know, it would be great if I didn't feel like I have that responsibility, but it would also be great if I didn't feel like I have a responsibility to have like 1,000-word long conversation about fantasy birth control in that book too. And unfortunately, the times that we are in kind of call for both, you know?
Yeah, I like that what you said about responsibility and kind of balancing that with
Yeah.
not paying attention, because you're so right that like you can't write for the critics. You have to write for yourself. You have to write for that reader. But yeah, the responsibility also is, especially with writing for teens. Lindsay,
Yeah.
you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I agree with everyone about you can't write for everyone. Not everyone's going to like your book, but I am also a punk who will never take her own advice or anyone else's advice, and my brain will think about it constantly. So I think for Belle, I thought about it all the time. Every sentence of every page, I was thinking about it, because it was the first time I'd written a character who was exceptionally close to my own experiences with navigating romance and just existence in general around other people discussing romance. And so I was thinking about like, yeah, I feel like I have a responsibility to have a conversation about not ace identity, but like, hey kids, if someone kisses you and you want to kiss them back, that's totally fine. Also, you might feel like you want to talk to them about what you're consenting to for in the future. Also fine. And you should maybe have that conversation or not. It's up to you. And so I felt like I wanted to do that because, I don't know, I would have wanted to read it when I was a kid and been like, I can do this. So I thought about that constantly the entire time I was writing Belle. And then I finished writing Belle, and I wanted to bury myself in a hole and never write again because I couldn't stop thinking about how I had, like, I don't know, it was just a very weird experience of, I know I want to do this thing and I feel like I should, but also you're never going to stop thinking about it. And then for What We Devour, I just actually took the good advice that everyone just said and was just like, nah, not gonna do this time. Not gonna try to write for everyone. I'm writing for a very specific audience of 5 people, and I hope they get it. But yeah, I don't know, I just agree with everyone. And then also what Margaret said, I feel like particularly for young adult, there's a responsibility not to provide certain scenes so much as to provide phrases and words and metaphors and experiences for kids to go, oh, this is something I feel. And you don't have to tell them how to feel about that or use the narrative to tell them how to feel or what to do, but just to give them some sort of reflection of themselves that feels honest. And you're not going to be able to do that for everyone or every reader. And I don't think you're going to be able to do it for yourself in every book. But I feel like it's important to think about what the reactions and consequences of those reflections could be for a reader who maybe isn't you, an adult who's already thought about it a lot when you're writing it.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I'm going to take us and totally shift gears here because we have some audience questions that I think will be really fun after I just asked you that like downer of a question. So I'm going to need everybody to just chime in real quick with their favorite writing or reading snack. And I'll just let you kind of, whoever wants to weigh in, go for it.
Popcorn. End of list.
Yeah,
Also popcorn.
Yeah.
Wait, are we all
Raisin-
popcorn?
I like Raisinets. I love Raisinets so much. It's my favorite candy. But then, weird, I moved over here finally after living in Germany for so long. And it's like, now I can have Raisinets whenever I want. And for some reason, all my mind wants is Bunch of Crunch, which really, oh, it was so disappointing. I'm so disappointed in myself. But I love Bunch of Crunch, and I don't know what that's about.
I have a confession right now, which is that Raisinets are the ones with like, it's raisin with chocolate around it, right? Yeah, I get those because I don't want to stuff my face with candy, and they're acceptable amounts of chocolate and raisin, but it's not good. It scratches the itch, but it's not good, Alicia.
I love them. I love them unabashedly. They are my favorite candy. And I mean, yes, I'm getting a fruit serving too. So, okay. Hello. No, but that's the lie I tell myself.
There we go. Well, I should tell you that Costco does sell Kirkland brand buckets of chocolate covered raisins. So just putting that out there.
I'm a chocolate covered almonds kind of person for the exact same reason of the like I need to have the healthy thing too, and an almond is like that's a nut, right? That counts.
Does it?
I'm good with anything chocolate, and I don't pretend it's healthy. I just have like pure chocolate.
You figured it out.
The honest one. Emily's the only one with any sort of personal honesty with herself.
I'm also a big fan of, and this is probably disgusting, but here we are. I really like pickle chips. So they're like Lay's chips that are pickle flavored. They're delicious.
I love dill pickle chips.
Yeah, they're great.
They're so good. Trader Joe's has a variety that are like amazing.
I've never heard of these before.
They're so good. They're so good. Have you ever had like a sandwich that comes with like some chips and a pickle, and then like the pickle kind of like seeps into the chips? It's so good. It's the best.
Oh, no.
I'm gross. It's fine.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
It's delicious. It's so good.
The texture.
No, what you need to do, you gotta get your sandwich, and then you put jalapeno chips on the sandwich.
Oh, jalapeno
and
chips
then
are
you
great.
squish it down, and there's a pleasing crunch.
Yeah.
I also really like ketchup chips. Lots of people don't, but I love ketchup chips.
So Canadian.
So Canadian.
God, do you know?
I'm trash for like either like any variation on the sour cream flavor, sour cream and cheddar, sour cream and onion.
Sour cream in general, I would just eat. I'm lactose intolerant, so that's a mistake. But I will still eat it
out of the bucket.
Yeah, just
the kettle cooked sweet Maui onion.
Oh yeah, those are good.
Game changer.
Here's my question for all of you. How are you eating these while working without just covering your desk in chip dust? Because every now and then I'll be like, yeah, I can eat hot Cheetos and write at the same time. I'm just like, no, I can't. That was folly.
Yeah, my trick is I don't write at a desk. I write on a couch, like sprawled out with like my legs. You know, I sit like a bisexual, and you know it's just very bad. And I have like blankets.
So many options. That didn't answer anything.
I have like chip dust everywhere. It's just not on a desk. It's just like on a blanket. Gotcha.
So, I've been doing these prints. I promise there's a segue here. There's a connection here. I've been doing these prints where you have to like ink up a thing and then stamp it basically. And I've been using this water soluble ink. And of course I've been getting it all over my hands, but I have a giant rag basket. And I was like, all right, just to make this go faster, I will soak a thing in like, a rag and water and have that nearby so I can wipe off my hands so I don't smudge it all over the paper. Turns out works great on Flamin' Hot Cheetos.
Excellent.
So have yourself a chip rag is what I'm saying.
Or you can just do the Oscar Isaac method and eat them with chopsticks.
Oh, that's smart too.
I keep thinking about that. And then every time I actually open the bag, I'm like, is today the day?
It could be.
No one can see me.
Exactly. No one can witness this crime.
Well, little did I know that our snack chat would take so many minutes. So we're running up on the time here. So I want to go ahead and wrap things up. I would love for each of you to go around and tell us your social media and maybe what your next release is, what we can look forward to from you. And if you're feeling so inclined, a book recommendation for another ACE book by someone who is not on this panel, maybe. Or someone who is, that's fine too. Let's start with Lindsay.
Oh boy. I believe I have all of my social media handles with my real name. Who knows if that was a mistake? Yeah, so I'm at Lindsay Miller on Twitter, Lindsay Miller on Instagram, Lindsay Miller author on TikTok. I don't post there. Don't go there. But yeah, you can basically find me everywhere on social media, even when I shouldn't be. And my next release is either going to be the Be an Ace anthology. I have a horror short story in that, or the Sleeping Beauty retelling. Don't know which one yet. One of those will happen first. Or they'll come out on the same day. We'll find out together.
All right, let's go to Margaret.
Okay, so I am available on social media's platforms, Twitter, Insta, technically Tumblr, but that is a cursed place, and TikTok kind of like once every academic quarter. But for across the board, except for Tumblr, it's not my real name. It's what_eats_owls, a question that shall remain eternal. And my next release is going to be, currently it's Painted Devils, which is the sequel to Little Thieves, and then 2 weeks later it's the Grimoire of Grave Fates. So right on the heels, and I am already preemptively breaking down about it emotionally. So stay tuned for a whole lot of exciting Twitter threads, I'm sure.
All right, Emily.
Okay, so I think all my handles are the same. It's a Victorian Tale. That's my website, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I'm also not on TikTok a lot. My next release is coming out on Tuesday. Ooh, let me see. Silver in the Mist. It's a spy story. And one recommendation that I always recommend because I love it so much is Electoe. It has a ghost dog, and the ghost dog is so cute.
The ghost dog's amazing. I love that book.
Ghost dog's amazing. And the art is so pretty.
Yeah, the physical copy of the book is absolutely stunning. Yeah. Tara.
My handle on Twitter is each star a world, but then everywhere else, basically Instagram, Tumblr, TikTok, you can find me at Tara Sim Author. My next release, I have a couple of anthologies next year where I'm going to have a short stories. One is Night of the Living Queers, and the other one is Unbound, which I think the cover reveals tomorrow, maybe? Stay tuned. And I also have the sequel for The City of Dusk, which comes out end of next summer, I believe. Maybe cross your fingers. And then my next YA is early 2024. It's called We Shall Be Monsters. It's Frankenstein meets Indian mythology. It doesn't have a ghost dog, but it does have an undead dog. So
Zombie dog.
That counts. That absolutely counts. Yeah. Alicia.
So, okay. I don't think there's any other author with my exact name. I think there's an Alicia somewhere. And I think she writes like really inspiring books. So if you get confused, just know I don't write inspiring books. But so everything is like a variation of like my name. So it's like Alicia Writes on Twitter and like Alicia Dow on Instagram. And you'll have to look up the spelling because I know it's really weird and I don't know why my mom named me that, but that's what she did. So next year, April, I have my first an anthology, which comes out like mid-April, I want to say. And that is called We Are Stardust, about a fallen star who becomes human and has bipolar disorder. And it's like an origin story for a superhero. But it's really emotional and lovely, and I loved it. Then in July, I have A Song of Salvation, which if The Sound of Stars and The Kindred was a trilogy, not that they were, not that Inkyard would ever let me say that, but if they were, this is the end of the trilogy and everybody gets a conclusion. And then in October, my first middle grade comes out, which is called Just a Pinch of Magic, and it's like adorable and it has food recipes and it's just like my favorite thing ever. And we've got, ace characters and we've got queer identities and it's lovely and I love it so much and I hope you give that a chance. And then there's another book which I think comes out in 2020 I don't know, what's next year, 2023? So then 2024, I have my first co-authored book, which is called The Cookie Crumbles, and it's co-authored with Tracy Badua. And it is like if Great British Bake Off Junior met Knives Out.
Oh no.
That's what I did. We love it. And for a recommendation, I would say anything by Claire Kahn is amazing.
Yeah, I think I forgot to do a recommendation, but Claire Kahn, beginning, end of list. I really like Redemptor, which is the second book in Raybearer too. And also Rosie should talk about their books.
Yes.
Mhm.
Hey, I'm here. Also, I have books out. Great, I didn't prepare anything. I was just
Here, okay. Rosie has a wonderful short story coming up in the Being Ace anthology where you can read both of our stories. 10 out of 10.
immediately forgot that I have any books coming out. Yeah, I'm also on social media. I'm at Rosie Thor, which is also spelled weird, which is my fault, not my mom's fault. When I was a kid, I was like, my name sounds the same as other names that end in E, like Amy, which has 2 E's at the end because it's French. And I didn't understand that you could have the same sound and it could be spelled differently. So I belligerently told my mother that I had to have 2 E's at the end of my name also. Anyway, my next book out is Life is Strange tie-in novel for the video game series. Life is Strange Stuff Story comes out in March. The prequel to the 3rd game in the series. And it's got lesbians in a punk band and some asexual characters too. So I'm very excited about it. I don't know what I'm allowed to say about it. Anyway, thanks everyone for coming. Follow all these lovely authors on social media, order their books, read their books, recommend their books. Use their books as a stool for your laptop when you're on Zoom meetings. Thanks so much for coming. There will be one more panel for this series on Sunday at the same time, so 3 p.m. Eastern, and I hope you will join us for that one as well. And thanks everyone.
Thank you.